Happy Friday, mountain lions. Last time we talked, well, we didn't talk, but I asked you to respond about why Roz might be telling Jaya and Jad the actual stories of her real life, even though she's not telling them. It's a story about her. And you guys came up with some pretty great stuff. Really, mainly it's because what she wants, like her goal, is to have them probably help her escape, right? They're probably her only chance. So she feels like by opening up to them, they might come to understand her and kind of advocate and be on her side for when it does come time to escape. Also, the noise you hear is not any construction outside. It's these two lunatics eating up something. Who knows? Keep them busy. So, awesome. You also made predictions about what animal could be attacking on the farm. So we will find out in this very next chapter. Let's jump right in. Chapter 21, The Howl. There's another big clue. It wasn't long before Roz found more signs of trouble. Furry faces poking out from the bushes, musky smells lingering in the fields, silhouettes trotting through the moonlight. And then, one night, she heard it. The long, menacing howl of a wolf. Chapter 22, The Wolves. The attack happened at dusk. 7 beastly shapes bounded over the fence and into the pasture. Old Annabelle had wandered off from the herd, and now she was an easy target. The herding machine saw the wolves coming and rolled in their directions, but the hunters were clever. They split up, darted past the clunky machine, and surrounded their target. The wolf pack was led by a large male. His name, Shadow. And it was easy to see why. He was quick and quiet. Oh my gosh, hold on one second. Hold on. That's enough. All right. He was quick and quiet and covered in dark fur, except for a long pale scar that streaked across his body like a comet. Shadow locked eyes with the cows, distracting her with his fierce gaze. And when his pack was in position, he said, "Attack!" The wolves lunged, snapping their jaws and at the cow's skinny legs. Annabelle kicked and hollered, "Stay away from me, you brutes!" She was a big animal, but losing my mind. She was a big animal, but the wolves knew what to do. They kept taunting her, kept trying to wear her down. The herd watched from afar, and they cried out to their friend. They wanted to help, but they were too frightened to move. Well, reader, you can guess who came to the rescue. Footsteps thundered across the pasture, and Roz leapt into the fight. Had she swung her fists or kicked her feet, the wolf pack might have fled. But the robot wasn't programmed to be violent. All she could do was awkwardly defend the cow. Roz felt teeth chomping her arm. She felt claws slashing her chest. Her pain sensors flared, and she howled, "Leave us alone!" The robot's booming voice startled the wolves, and in that instant, she pried one of them away. Then Annabelle landed a hard kick, and another wolf tumbled back into the grass. More help was coming. The other cows had finally found their courage, and the angry herd was on the march. The wolves had missed their chance. Shadow gave a frustrated grunt, and the pack retreated. They dashed through the pasture, leaped over the fence, and disappeared into the trees. The robot activated her headlights, and shafts of light beamed out from her eyes. While the crowd came around, Roz carefully examined Annabelle's injuries. "I need to clean and dress these bite wounds," said the robot, "but you will be okay." "Of course I'll be okay," the cow panted. "I'm old, but I'm feisty. Those wolves don't scare me." Annabelle talked tough, but there was no mistaking fear in her eyes. All the cows were afraid. They knew that if the wolves attacked again, their next victim might not be so fortunate. So wow, Roz has a ton of courage, and then she kind of inspired the pack of cows to do the right thing, to go and protect Annabelle. So it's kind of cool how Roz took action, and then it caused other people to take action. That happens a lot, right? When you stand up for somebody, other people are inspired to do the same. So keep doing the right thing. All right. Chapter 23, The Rifle. Ooh. The wolves returned the very next morning, shortly after dawn. They leaped from the trees and started chasing a poor calf through the pasture. Roz managed to drive them off, but that night they returned again. The herd came stampeding into the barn as the wolves laughed and trotted back to the fields. The cows were in shock. They refused to leave the barn. If this continues, the herd would produce less milk, and the farm would lose money. And Mr. Sharif would send Roz back to the factory. Something had to be done. Knock, knock, knock. The dog barked, and the children opened the door. "How'd you get all those scrapes?" said Jaya. "Is everything okay?" said Jad. "I must speak with your father," said Roz. Mr. Sharif came to the door, and Roz explained the problem. At the first mention of wolves, he sent his children to their rooms, but the dogs stayed. Oscar had no idea what the man and the robot were discussing, and his tail happily wagged as he stood beside them. However, his tail stopped wagging when Mr. Sharif handed Roz a rifle. The dog had seen the rifle in action, and it frightened him to its core. He scurried into the bushes and hid there, whimpering, while the conversation went on. "What do you mean you can't fire a rifle?" the man yelled. "Roz, you're a farmer now, and sometimes farmers have to do their jobs." It was the first time Mr. Sharif had ever yelled at Roz. She waited patiently as words and spittle flew from his mouth. "My farm and my family are in danger. Roz, I order you to kill the wolves." "I can't follow that order because I'm not programmed to be violent," said Roz. Mr. Sharif let out a heavy sigh. He knew Roz was right, but when he reached for the weapon, she wouldn't let go. The man stared at the robot. The robot stared at the dog. The dog stared at the rifle. Oscar whimpered and was still hiding in the bushes. Just the sight of the rifle sent him into a panic. It was hard to believe that such a fearful animal was related to the wolves, but dogs are related to wolves, thought the robot, and her computer brain began buzzing with activity. She thought of dogs and wolves and rifles. She thought of Shadow, the wolf leader, and the long, straight scar on his side. And then she had an idea. "Although I cannot fire the rifle," said Roz, "I believe it can help me solve the wolf problem." Mr. Sharif frowned. He didn't know what the robot was getting at, but he was happy to let her handle the wolves by herself. "Fine, try it your way," he said. "Just don't lose any cows, or else we might have to lose a robot, too." Yikes. Chapter 24, The Bluff. So the bluff could mean two things. Bluff means to fake somebody out, to be bluffing, right? You're not telling the truth. And it's also an area of like grassy land. So we'll see which one it's referring to here. The cows peered out from the barn at Roz. The robot was holding the rifle. She carried it to the far side of the pasture and placed it by her feet. Then she began coating herself with mud and grass, and probably a little cow dung. When every inch of her body was concealed, she nestled down into the ground and became part of the landscape, an ordinary clump of grass. So here she is again using her camouflage skills that she learned from the island. The cows were stunned. What's Roz doing? Is she all right? Where did she go? Roz had learned to camouflage herself back on the island, and now she was using that trick once again. She sat motionless for hours, waiting for the wolves to appear. Daylight faded, the stars came out, the moon climbed into the sky. But the wolves didn't show, so Roz tried something new. The robot was an excellent mimic, and she began crying out in the sad voice of a wounded calf. "Please help me," she cried. "I have hurt my leg, and I cannot move." Crickets chirped. "Please help me." An owl hooted. "I cannot move." The calf's voice continued crying out. Finally, as the moon dipped behind the trees, 7 wolves slunk into the pasture. Shadow led the way, silently stalking through the night. Covered in dark fur, he was practically invisible. Only his long, pale scar gave him away. Noses sniffed, eyes searched, and ears listened. Then a clump of grass began rustling. So another skill she learned on the island, right? That mimicking, that's speaking like the animal. So now she's pretending to be a calf that's hurt. Obviously, we know she's not, but Shadow and the wolves don't know that. There, whispered Shadow. The calf is hiding in the tall grass. Something feels wrong to me, Shadow, said a female wolf. This is too easy. I make the decisions, Barb, snapped the wolf leader. Slash, lurk, fang, circle around, and wait for my signal. 3 wolves dashed off. When they were in position, Shadow gave the signal, and his pack closed in on the wounded calf. With each step, the grass rustled more and more until the ground seemed to be moving. And then, the ground really was moving. Grass and dirt crumbled aside, and there was the robot, standing tall, pointing with her rifle. The pack froze. Hello, Shadow, growled the robot. My name is Roz. I see from your scar that you're familiar with rifles. You've been shot at before. You know what will happen if I have to use this. Reader, you and I are well aware that Roz was not programmed to be violent. She couldn't have pulled that trigger if she wanted to. But she didn't want to. She was bluffing, faking. Of course, Shadow didn't know any of this. As far as the wolf knew, he was defeated, and so he did what wolves do when they're defeated. He lay down and cowered before the robot. For the first time anyone could recall, the wolf leader looked weak. I do not want to hurt any wolves, Roz continued, but if you return to this farm, I will have no choice. Now, please leave and never come back. Shadow scrambled away with his tail between his legs. Barb was close behind him, followed by the other wolves, and soon the entire pack had disappeared into the night. All right, readers, that's where we'll stop for today. So Roz really took care of the wolf problem in her own very unique way.